So it looks like we're recording, so we'll call this meeting to order at 6:32. And our first item on the agenda is Pledge Allegiance.
And I have a flag this time.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up is agenda review. I don't have any amendments. I'm not sure if anyone else does. Terry.
I would like to add one, and that is to talk about when we talked about a little bit last time, executive, God, I'm thinking of the business term thing, trying to think education wise, Julie's performance review type of thing for the superintendent. If we could put that on the agenda in terms of talking about a process or how we're going to do that, so we don't let it fall through the cracks.
Actually, on this agenda, we do have a discussion for scheduling a board retreat, and that is one of the topics for the board retreat. And
Okay.
if we can schedule it, we're hoping to do the board retreat this month, the end of this month.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then the other thing I wondered, are we going to hear about the graduation plans during this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I think the MVU administration is going to take the lead on that in their report.
Okay, beautiful.
Nodding.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other amendments? Seeing none. I can't see everybody that's a board member. So if I'm not picking up on you waving, putting your hand up, just send me a message on chat. Okay. So next up is the consent agenda, which we would need a motion to approve the minutes of May 19th meeting.
I'll move it, Chris. Don.
Don's the first. We need a second.
I'll second. Terry.
Terry's the second. Any discussion? Hearing none at this point, all those in favor of approving the minutes from May 19th, signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Against? Aye. Looks like a motion carries 9-0. Next up is presentation, starting up with administration updates. Most of them are written, but I believe we have some updates for graduation and whatnot.
So MVU, do you want to start?
Jay Hartman, you want to take the lead on that?
Nah, go ahead, Dan. I'll follow you.
So over the last 2 days, we've had seniors come on in and pick up their caps and gowns. And while they've been doing that, we've had Debbie LaRose kind of figuring out how many of them actually plan on attending the evening. Of 117 seniors, I believe we have about 108 right around there that are planning on attending the graduation ceremony. So it'll have to be over 2 evenings. So we're looking at June 11th and June 12th as those 2 evenings, going from 5 to 8 p.m. So we have rented through Vermont Tent Company, about an 80-foot long tent, and it's going to be placed out in the front island of MVU. And when people come in, today they were given a placard with their name on it, a colored placard with their name on it, and that will help to signify the time they're actually going to show up. And we are going to send out another email, voice message, and we'll push it out via Facebook, letting the seniors and their families know exactly what time they're looking to show up. But we're looking at roughly 16 kids per hour time block. So we're looking at, like, let's say Adams through Bordeaux. Those students would be on Thursday at 5 to 6 p.m. during that time. And we will push all that information out. So therefore, we don't have too many people showing up, crowding the system and just kind of making things harder. So when they show up, they'll present that. They'll come all the way around the MVU parking lot, and that'll all be lined off. They'll come on up and they'll stop just in front of the island. We're looking at probably having me right there, and I'll explain to parents I'll take the placard from the student and I'll explain to them that, they're going to pull up to this area. The graduate will be able to get out. I think we're going to get a little bit more guidance as to whether families will be able to get out of vehicles or not, but it looks like a couple of them may be able to at this point, which is good news. I think once we're able to tell parents that and be able to tell them, hey, guess what? You actually can get out of the car and take some photos. We will have it kind of, for lack of a better term, roped off, but kind of stanchioned off as to how close they can get to the stage to take a picture. But one of the things that we did hear from the graduates was that they wanted to walk across the stage. So we do have a stage. It's not very high. Of course, there's only an 8-foot-high tent, but we do have a stage that there'll be a ramp going up to it. Whenever the vehicle comes up, I will hand Julie, who is going to read the names. Sorry about that. Sounds like your home phone ringing. And then from there, people will walk. Julie will read the name. The graduate will walk across. They'll be able to pick up their cover, take it out of the plastic, pick up the cover, stop in front of the stage, get their picture taken by their family. Family will get back in their vehicle. They'll travel down just a little bit. Once the child comes off, the graduate comes off the stage, they will go into kind of a quarantine or a little bit of a section from the tent. From there will be Cold Hollow Photography, and they will take a senior portrait of the student. We handed out the flyer for them today if they wanted to fill that out. If not, they'll still have the picture taken, and Mr. Cora will actually Photoshop them all together for one senior portrait. He will actually do that. From there, they'll go on to the next section of the tent, which is the last section of the tent, and students will pick up a bag of goodies given by the boosters for each kid. And then the car will come around to the far end. They'll be able to get back in their vehicle right there. Again, it's about 80 feet from where they started. And MVU teachers will, on the other side of that, going right around D-Pod out towards the main entrance, they will line up out through there. And they're going to have bells and all kinds of stuff. So that's the plan for it. Again, a lot of it depended on how many kids came in today and yesterday to pick up their caps and gowns. Because originally when we heard, they weren't going to do it, I think the parents had a big say in it. And finally said, you are coming and you are going to do it because it's not all just about you. So it's, sorry, my phone. So that's what we're looking at. Jay, did I get it all?
Yeah, very well done. Julie, did we inform you that we have a final graduation meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock?
Absolutely. It's in my calendar.
Oh, good. I've been spending so much time virtual networking with all you guys. I keep forgetting what I'm doing.
Never. No, I'm excited about the detail of the teachers coming. I had one parent call to put in a request, and it was about that. And I'm hoping that we would have a plan for that, for some sort of closure for graduates with their teachers, and that's really nice.
Terry, you have a question?
Dan,
Terry, go ahead.
I heard you talk about the walking across and getting the tent. Are Jay and Chris going to be on the stage?
Yes, they will.
Yes.
Yep. So the only three people that'll be up there will be Jay, Chris, and Julie. Julie will read the names. Jay and Chris will be up there as well.
Good.
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now that it's 25 people that can meet outside, is that why you're saying families might be able to get out of the car?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just curious, did you all consider having like the field days or whatever and having all the cars there at once, or was that just too logistically impossible? Like all the seniors come at the same time with the same kind of.
At the time, I'll take this one, Dan. At the time that we had begun planning for all this, Terry, following the governor's guidelines and directions of May 8th, we felt it was in the best interest not to do that. Since that time, of course, as everybody knows, things have changed a little bit. The spigot, as they constantly refer to, has been turned a little bit. But at some point, you've just got to make that decision and live with it and do the best that you can. We were concerned, I won't lie to you, that Many of the graduates perhaps might say, you know, because I can't be there with all my friends. But I do know that there are other high schools, some down in the Chittenden County area, who are using the Champlain Valley Fairgrounds and are, for lack of a better term, having that cattle session, as you described, but they can't get out of their vehicles at all because there's so many of them.
Mm.
Yeah, one of the concerns with having those large groups like drive-in movie theater style is that you then have to ensure people don't get out of their car. And excited high school graduates may well get out of their car and go hug all their friends. And then Dan would be running around trying to get people to stop, which is probably not what he wants to do with all of his time, or Jay. So
Terry, we did consider that. And we actually considered out on part of like where the field hockey field is, that whole like baseball field. We did consider it because we considered that area to be big enough. But at the time when we first considered it, the guidelines were saying you still can't do that. And it would just be forever trying to organize things. I mean, we had like, oh, we'll just project it up and we'll put a big screen or, you know, a big piece of like white sheet above where the goalposts are, and we'll project onto that. And it was just becoming, it took on a life of its own. And then they came in and said, no, you can't do those type of events. So we had to kind of plan this way. We planned inside. Then they said we couldn't do that. And therefore we had to move it outside. And so therefore we've just kind of ran with that plan. And we've really kind of the last couple of weeks just been going with that plan and moving forward.
Wow. Herculean efforts then. Can I ask one more question? And that is, I noticed that WCAX TV has a graduation of class 2020 or something. Are they doing that for all the schools in the state?
Yes, they are. Jay made his video this morning.
Awesome.
That's why his head went down.
I didn't
He's going to have to do more virtual stuff, but he wrote up a very nice little speech. He read it today, leaning on the front sign out front. It has been sent off to WCAX. They're actually going to let us know tomorrow when it will air, and we will send that information out to seniors as well and post it via Facebook and all that. So yes, we are included in it, and we're sending that out. Well, it should be aired. My guess is probably next week. They do have the schedule up. If you go to the WCAX website and you go to graduates, there's a whole schedule right there as to when each school is going to be.
So can you remind us old board members?
Thank you.
Dan, once you know, can you let us old board members know so we won't miss it?
We can certainly do that. Yep.
Thank you.
Very good. I guess now, Joanne's got a question.
So it's not a question. I just, as the mom of a senior, I just want to say thank you. I know that a lot of work went into this. I know a lot of plan A's, B's, and C's went into this. Whatever plan we are on, I'm confident that it's going to work out great and that our kids are going to remember it. So it's different. It's okay. It's COVID-19. It's 2020. It's the 50th, graduation anniversary, whatever we want to call it. But I just want to say thank you. That's no questions. You guys have done great.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. So at this point, I guess we will move on to superintendent update.
So I have so many updates. I can't even begin to tell you. I have in the newsletter, I had to put glasses on so I can read things. In my newsletter, I highlighted a bit about our graduation. The picture of students is last year's group, but it was just to let people think graduate. I had a little bit about our summer programming. I previewed this a bit last year. The majority of our summer programming will be virtual. Our tutoring, much of the 21st Century Crossroads summer programming will also be virtual. If I've included in the folder for school board members the guidance from the Department of Health as well as the Agency of Education on what our requirements are for in-person instruction in summer camps and summer programming. It's a challenge both in terms of finding appropriate staff that are able to do it, as well as the facilities. And many families are still saying, I'd rather not. If you're offering virtual tutoring, we'd prefer that. We will be providing some in-person opportunities. Students who have special needs, who have not particularly benefited from online platform for their learning, were of course a first priority. So we've worked together, Wendy, Tanya, Kosha, Jen, Linda Rouse Turner. They've been working together to make sure that the offerings are appropriate. Carol has done a tremendous job of trying to put together some in-person activities, as well as all of the fun activities that she wants to do virtually with students. They are going to be doing an in-person kayaking camp and working with Swanton Rec to use our mountain bikes, so that we're doing something cooperatively between the two. But at this point, we are definitely looking at all of the criteria necessary for in-person and trying it out with small numbers of children, so that we can then increase that for whatever our process is in the fall. I will be sharing with you, I've worked with the school nurses and, pardon me, and have sent out to facility directors and principals a COVID-19 exposure plan, which is very broad, but it is something we're supposed to have. And we received a template from another school district where they had a team of folks working through it, and it went through our Vermont School Board Insurance Trust. And we've worked to make it fit a little better for Missisquoi Valley. And that's only a broad brush in terms of high risk, medium risk, and low risk employees and situations, and the kinds of environmental and administrative tasks we need to do to make sure we protect staff and the public, where that will lead us into work that's happening to create a framework for the fall. What's challenging about the fall, and the administrators here will know, about a week ago we had an admin meeting, and all I did was say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that either. I mean, it really felt like people were asking really good questions, and there are so many unknowns right now. The information changes so quickly. The Department of Health feels pretty sure that we can open school in some fashion in the fall with precautions. They say that glibly, and I don't mean that they are glib. It just sounds, you can open with precautions, very easy. And then you read what some of the precautions are, and you realize that we're going to have some action planning teams happening in our schools over the summer. We're going to likely have to have staff come in and receive some stipends to do some of this leadership work, so that we're working on logistical teams with transportation, curriculum work, all of these different aspects, health and well-being. There are a lot of states that have some nice frameworks. I know that the Agency of Education is working with other chief state school officers, that's what their abbreviation stands for, to create some of these documents. Our Agency of Ed is telling us they're not going to give us anything until after the 4th of July. We feel that's too late. Not that we're going to know anything on July 5th, but we need to begin some of the legwork now. And I think it's pretty easy to put things in boxes, and then when they give us a format we need to fill out, we'll be in a position to start moving with that. But we're just going to have our principals and other leaders within our school and teacher leaders come together to really do the deep thinking about in-person school, almost like regular, with precautions, remote learning for times when there could be a flare-up, or a reactive closure because there's an illness. And then the hybrid that people are calling, that could be, should we have to have children 6 feet apart and not sharing space? It would likely mean we would need to have, whether it's A days and B days or some other configuration where we have a smaller number of students in our buildings at one time receiving in-person education and others receiving online remote education. So all of those three sort of basic scenarios will need to be planned for, and we have to expect that we'll be moving in and out of them potentially, with ever-changing health requirements. So there will be that too. Megan, did you have a question about that?
Yeah, so is there conversation about how the schools will address it individually? Because there's a big difference between Franklin School, where social distancing 6 feet apart is doable, much more easier than, say, Swanton, where there's 600 5 to 8, 9-year-olds. And so is the thought that all of the schools would be taking the same approach, or that it would be dependent on each individual school situation?
It's a really great question. Much of it will need to be in concert. We can't have children in one building getting a completely different kind of education than others. Our staff and our families are dependent upon one another. We even really need to work in concert as a region to some degree, because I live in Swanton but teach in St. Albans, or vice versa. If my kids aren't in school, then I can't be in the building either to teach. So there's an impact there that crosses communities. If you think about it, the footprint of each of our buildings, whether it's smaller or larger, is more to scale. So even though Franklin is smaller, they also only have one classroom. So if you have, it is difficult for larger schools, medium-sized, we've got all of them, right? Small, medium, large school. So there's a lot to be considering. We have no answers today, except that those are the topics that we're going to need to consider for sure. So obviously more to come. I also put in the folder, the board folder, your legislative update, because I know that you get them as Vermont School Board Association members, but not, sure that everybody always gets them to read. I know that there was information about a yield bill that happened that did pass the House. My hope is that it will pass the Senate as well. A few weeks ago, we were hearing an awful lot about revoting school budgets and clawing back funds from the education fund. We are not hearing that for the past several weeks. Tomorrow, who knows? But right now, we have not been hearing any of that. People have been talking about leveraging all of the revenue that is possible using the CARES Act funding as creatively as possible, changing legislation so that the reserve fund does not have to be funded at the same level during this crisis. And of course, setting the yield a little bit higher, but my understanding is it's maybe 4 cents, not the 25 cents people had been throwing around. The state is also going to develop a skinny budget and then come back again in August to develop the further budget when they have more information about revenue and how that's going. We are in a good position as a school district. We have managed our funds exceedingly well. Laura is going to give a financial report later. We have a carryover that we hope we'll be able to use in some fashion next year if we're allowed to, because I think that could help us with revenue shortfalls from the Agency of Ed. There's still a lot we don't know about when we're going to get our funding or how we're going to be able to use it. Some things such as you can't use special ed for reimbursement. We're going to short you your special ed reimbursement, but you can use some of this CARES Act money to fill in that gap. Some of that conversation has been going on, but you know, we are a district that is very responsible in our budgeting. We put out to the community a budget that had a significantly lower budget increase than anyone else in the state, really, at a 2.4% per pupil expenditure increase. We had been very careful about the positions that that were right-sized across the district. And we also, we're below the state average in our per pupil spending. So I think it's important for the community to understand that we get nervous when state administration starts talking about broad-based, reactive ways of dealing with things that does not differentiate between communities. This community has been very responsive to taxpayers and to students. I'm not saying others are irresponsible, but there are other communities where they spend well above the state average, and we're not that community. So I hope that the response to this crisis is one that differentiates between the different needs of districts. So that was a little, I just wanted to make sure that, because sometimes statements that get out there when politicians speak can be a little confusing. I did want to touch on a few things that are not in my report because things come up, and we have 2 more board meetings. This is our last board meeting before school closes, and then it just goes by so quickly. The SRO positions that the Swanton Police put in a grant for, they heard today that they were approved for those positions. They were not contingent upon the school board signing anything. They're additional police for the community. We're going to be meeting with Chief Stell on Thursday at our administrative meeting to talk some more about what that could look like. And then we'll come back to the board and talk about whether we want that use of community policing to be as a school resource officer for our elementary schools. I know the administration supports that, but I just want to make sure we bring that back to the board for that conversation. I also put in your folder a statement that the Vermont School Board Association, Vermont Superintendents Association, and the Vermont Principals Association made concerning racism and what's going on in our country right now. So I thought that was important to share. I also put in there a letter that I wrote to all staff with resources for children and families that'll be going out in our weekly field memo tomorrow. Really just talking about how crisis in this country is also, it's important to remember the impact on children and families no matter where we live, and that it's an opportunity for us to model values of humanity and tolerance and care, and teach students those skills that they need to really create a better future for themselves. So that was the gist of that letter that you should see tomorrow. Laura, I wanted to talk with you, bring it up for you to share just a bit. We've had a conversation about food service. We've been the largest food delivery, food service program throughout this whole school dismissal. MVU has served probably 90,000 meals at this point, if not more, closer to 100,000. Dan has a tally. And it's just been amazing. And the bus companies have been fabulous and worked with us. The teachers and support staff that have come, the custodians, Dan's loading milk crates every morning. He doesn't need to lift weights at all. It's been an incredible effort. After school closes, we are not going to have access to that level of staff, and we're not going to have access to our buses to the same degree. And to, So I wanted to have Laura, with that sort of preamble, share the discussion she's been having this week.
Okay, so I have to agree with Julie. I think that, this was a perfect example of a group of stakeholders coming together that typically maybe don't work so closely, like a food service company and a transportation company, and really knocking it out of the park as far as what they were able to accomplish. So just tremendous thanks to so many people that made this happen for our community. But that being said, as we think about the end of the school year, and increased costs or potential for increased costs, reduction in staffing, availability, and the need, obviously, and then changes in rules and regulations as far as the Agency of Ed and the Child Nutrition Program are concerned. That prompted a discussion with the administrators, myself, bus companies, food service management employees, etc. The direction that I believe that we're going to be heading in is to cease the delivery of meals as of the end of the school year. We would continue to provide meals and have access to meals for families at MVU with 2 different pickups on a Monday and Thursday. We're hoping that this was a great recommendation by Dan, that if multiple meals are allowed to be picked up at one time, less frequently during the week, that might encourage people to come and be, that they can't just pick up one meal, but if they make one trip, they can pick up enough meals for several days. So we're hoping that might encourage participation for people who might live out in West Swanton or Franklin or more rural areas. We will need some staff to make this happen, but that staff will be very minimal. We're hoping 2 to 3 people, possibly 4 to 5 hours a day, maybe on a rotation or with a sub. MVU, all meals would be prepared at MVU. The pickup would be at MVU. The Abbey, which is our food service management company for Highgate, Swanton, and MVU, will be preparing all of those meals starting the end of June. Franklin will continue through the end of June, but then they will cease to provide meals over the summer. What else? We are working right now with the Agency of Ed, or I should say the Agency of Ed is working with the USDA to continue a waiver so that all of our communities are considered area eligible. Franklin is currently not area eligible, which means they don't hit the 50% free and reduced price percentage. But there was a waiver put in place so we could provide meals to anyone that needed them during this last couple of months. Hopefully that waiver will go through, but one of the considerations I'd like the board to think about is, if that doesn't happen, would we consider a small subsidy so that we could continue to provide meals to anyone that needed them in any children 18 and under that needed them in those communities, like we would in Highgate, Swanton. I know that was the board's preference previously, but I wanted to put that out there again in case that waiver doesn't go through. Other than that, I think we would probably see a reduction in participation, unfortunately, but I'm hoping people will still access meals if there's a need. The Abbey, weeks ahead of time has to order food. We try to create as little waste as possible, but obviously that it'll be a moving target for a while as we transition. We could have possibly chosen to do something different for the last 2 weeks in June, but we're really trying to be aware and conscious of transitions for families in the community and ourselves and administrators and our staff and bus companies as well. We found that making the most minimal amount of changes to how we're providing the meals is actually beneficial for everybody. So, Dan, did I miss anything?
No, I was just adding up some of the meal counts, but no, I didn't. It sounds like you've pretty well captured everything. Some of it also is the bus companies don't also always have the employees during the summer. Some of them have other positions that they take. Some have it off for childcare. Some just have it off. So that is also part of the issue, is that the bus companies don't always have all of their employees. They're not scheduled or contracted after June 12th. So starting on the 15th, they are no longer scheduled to be, quote unquote, they don't keep a full staff of bus employees.
That's true. And I guess I would add that typically during the summertime when Crossroads is operating, obviously the 21C staff help us provide meals to students, and it's usually part of that program, so it's a little easier to accomplish. And with the minimal summer programming that we're doing, obviously that has an impact on those meals as well. So, but we would be operating through the same summer food service program. Our office would be taking care of all those applications and making sure we're following those requirements there. If this is something that the board is hopefully supportive of.
Devin.
Sorry, struggling to unmute there. Is there going to be a plan to have pickup hours available outside of the 8 to 5 kind of time frame to allow some of those families that do have parents headed back to work fairly soon to be able to have access to those meals?
We did talk about that today. I had brought up the fact that a lot of people hopefully will be returning to work. So right now, Dan and Justina shared with me that there's been less people prior to the 8 o'clock pickup time. But I think I agree with you. I think that might change as people go back to work. So maybe we do something a little earlier. Food storage, safe handling, and refrigeration is a huge part of this. And so we have to be aware of that, as well as the staffing costs to have people there for multiple hours at a time. But we did talk about potentially doing like a 7 to 11 or a 7 to noon. Dan, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
Yeah, that's what we were considering, was the 7 to noon, so that we get some of those parents perhaps before they went to work. Part of it is federal regulations require that every person gets a milk with each meal. So if you're getting a breakfast and a lunch, you get 2 milks with that. And of course, it must be kept at a certain temp. So we can't just kind of leave it out or anything on that line. So there must be somebody.
But again, that's part of the reason we were really thinking that the 2 days a week, if they could, get to the school 2 days a week, then they'd have meals technically for 7 days, hoping that would help and encourage people to participate. Hopefully I believe that waiver is in place as far as the non-congregate feeding and the allowance of multiple meals to be distributed at one time through the end of August. So hopefully that will remain in place. If you had any
more in the evening, some evening hours as well? Or are we just kind of asking about which hours we had?
Well, I think any hours outside of the normal 8 to 5 would provide additional opportunities for parents to get there. That having the multiple meals available to get picked up is great. I think it does provide that access for parents to be able to get, take care of multiple days in one trip. It also creates the additional risk of missing multiple days because you missed one trip. So, there's a trade-off with any of these options. So I guess just trying to mitigate that risk of the multiple day, non-access issue is what I'm thinking of. So just the easier we can make it, the better. Obviously there's logistics to deal with, but that's just my thought.
And if anyone in the community hears anything, or they're speaking to families, or they have input, please send it to Dan, myself. Obviously we want this to work out the best as possible. So if something's not working, we need to know about it. And I don't have children in this community right now, so unless we hear from someone else, I don't know.
I do agree that maybe one morning session and one evening session might be a good idea, because not everybody can make the early time and not everybody can make the late times, but maybe they can do one or the other. Problem is, then you kind of put yourself in even more risk of them. If they miss it, they miss a lot of meals, because then they'd only have one shot. Jen?
Sorry. Would you be able to put something in place, like if a person could pick up for a family that wouldn't be able to make it and deliver to that family? Would that be an option? Like if they said, so-and-so is going to pick up for our family?
So we asked this question today. We were talking to Tina about it. The state has allowed as much. They've worked with the USDA, and basically children don't have, so it's a gray area. So the less we sort of say formally, the better here. We are allowed to provide meals to someone who requests meals at no limit, basically. So and children do not have to be present. So if Jane Doe goes to MBU and says that she has 10 children that she needs multiple meals for, we are allowed to give those and claim those meals. If Jane Doe says that she's picking them up for a neighbor, that would not be allowed as a claimable meal.
Okay.
So I think we talked about, carefully disseminating information so that people understand they can pick up. I mean, the intent here is to feed the community. So I don't feel bad about it. And, I have talked to the agency a bit about this in length about what we can say and what we can't say. So the potential is there.
Yeah.
So we could take a look at offering like a morning session, maybe like a 7 to 11, and then an evening session, maybe a 4 to 8 or something along that line. And Laura, you and I can discuss that. Maybe we have a group of people that might come in and operate the meal program during that time.
And I know the Abbey is willing to do anything they can to make this work. Refrigeration of food and the shelf life of food and the storage is going to be, and also their staffing. Typically they reduce staffing in the summer. But again, they're working very hard to try to make this work for us. So, but we can have those conversations for sure.
Thank
A lot of
you.
it has been on the refrigerated truck and such. So we have the refrigerated truck. Somebody could just go on out to it as long as it's left unlocked during that time, or somebody will go and unlock it and then get whatever meal of it to feed people. It should be all set. Should be
So
pretty.
Dan and Laura, I'm really pleased with what I'm hearing. What it sounds like is you people need the flexibility. If you find 7 to 10, you get most of the people in the morning, then you may want to adjust your time if you were going to 11 or 12. And then at night, you may get quite a few from 4 to 5 or 4 to 6. But if you don't get anybody from 7 to 8, then I think you need the flexibility, and I think you probably have it, board support, to go out there and see what happens. My guess is the idea of morning hours and afternoon hours a couple days a week are going to be great. But I have a feeling that there'll be a couple of hours will be busy, and the rest of them you'll just be talking to each other. So good luck and stay flexible.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So the last thing that I had really was just to inform the board that I was elected to the Vermont Superintendents Association Board of Trustees as the secretary. I'm going to have to hone my typing skills. But the Board of Trustees meets once a month and is very involved in statewide policy. We've been very active as an organization, as the School Board Association has as well during this whole crisis. So I'm very much looking forward to working with leaders from across the state, and I think it will be very beneficial for our district for me to have that front row seat to some of the policy work that happens in the state. But I just wanted to let you know, make you aware as a board about that.
Very nice. Very nice.
Congratulations.
I was very surprised, but gratified. And honestly, I just because this is the last board meeting before the end of school, I just want to be very grateful to our teachers and staff, our principals, our central office staff and administrative team. It has been the second of crazy school years. And I don't know how we would come through it so strong as we are strong without everybody's support and help. I'm just so proud of this team.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, on to new business. And first up on new business is award the bid for the Highgate parking lot and stormwater contract. We sent bids out and they were due, I believe, the 29th. And we actually had a meeting yesterday and went over them. Scott, Tyler Mumley, Laura, and myself. And we invited, I believe, 6 people to bid. It was an open bid, but we directly invited 6 people or 6 companies to bid. 4 submitted bids. Hang on, I'm trying to find the email.
Yeah, there's a spreadsheet in the shared drive that summarizes this also.
Do you want me to present that, Chris, or does that be difficult for you to see the board?
No, I'm fine. We can present it. That's good.
I'll do that while you talk.
Oh, also a point of clarity. When we had the vote earlier on the meeting minutes, I said it was 9-0. It was actually 8-0 because Jen hadn't joined the meeting yet.
And I'll take note of that because I do not see Purette.
Oh, that's true.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Oh, you're just so quiet. Thank you. I'm glad.
Just very mild, meek, and quiet.
Excellent.
Maybe blow it up, Julie.
I know I can't see it, which is a problem. Did that blow it up?
No.
No.
Well, let's find it then.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so as you see, the 4 bids that were submitted was Goslin Excavating out of St. Albans, Wrights Excavating out of Franklin, Partner Excavating, which I believe they're out of Alberg, and then GW Tatro, which is out of Cambridge or Jeffersonville. The lowest bid was Goslin. The next one was Wrights. So those are the ones we spent a lot of time talking about. The other ones were a fair amount higher, and GW Tatros was quite a bit higher, as you can see. One of our concerns in discussing the details of the bids and whatnot, we felt that Goslin was a little low in some areas, and it was kind of concerning. Tyler went back and talked with Goslin a little bit, and one of his areas that he was low in was the performance bond insurance, and then another area was in the stormwater project itself. Another concern we had with Goslin was size of his company and compared to the size of this project. He's a smaller excavation company. He started out more as a contractor, carpenter, and has expanded to excavation, whereas Wrights has always been excavation, and they have a much bigger crew, much more equipment. So our recommendation would be to award to Wrights Excavating, which also they're out of Franklin, which is within our district. They've done projects like this many times. They've worked with stormwater before. They have a lot of experience with it. They had no issues with meeting our timeline. They had all their ducks in a row, all their I's dotted and T's crossed, and
They have the full bonded. They're fully bonded, Chris, on this.
yes.
Whether or not we require a performance bond is something the board could weigh in on here. It's about a $15,000 additional cost to the contract if you chose to award to Wrights. Our engineering firm that we're working with, Tyler Mumley and Ruggiano Engineering, has done a lot of work with Wrights, and they don't necessarily believe that a performance bond is necessary. I like performance bonds because it's our guarantee. But this company does have a very great history and a very great reputation as far as getting the work done on time and within budget. So that would be something for the board to consider.
Chris and Laura, how much do we know about the soils there and the parking lot? Because on a project like this, I probably wouldn't have a performance bond with a reputable company if we know what we're getting into. So I don't know anything about that parking lot other than it needed repair, but is it such that we know that there's a good subsurface and good opportunity to dig for drainage and stuff?
Yeah, actually, the land is very conducive to the stormwater runoff stuff. We have very good water filtration and whatnot. It's mostly sandy soil. There is some clay veins, but very few. The base underneath the pavement is actually not, it's not enough for what we need for the bus traffic, but it is something that we can save the material and use it for rebuilding our fire access road. And they can probably reuse some of the material to rebuild the base once they regrade the parking lot for water runoff. As far as Wright's getting the job done and needing the performance bond, I do feel comfortable not having it for them. They've been in this community for many, many, many years, and they have a reputation of getting jobs done and doing them right. So
I'm with you, Chris. I would not, I mean, if they're that reputable and long time doing this kind of work, I would pass on the bond and save the money.
Don, just to follow up on your soil question too, soil sampling was done as part of the stormwater grant piece, and those were reviewed by both the engineering firms for the stormwater piece as well as Ruggiano as well. So those have been, not that I don't trust Chris's opinion at all.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
We have the results of those on file, and those were provided to the bidders as well.
So with that information, I mean, I know every project is complex, but this should be a pretty straightforward job for somebody that's done this.
right.
Hopefully.
So,
It's been a long time to get here, Don, so we're hoping it's smooth sailing from here on out.
I think we've talked about it for 3 years, haven't we?
yes.
Oh, much longer than that. Much longer than that.
Is that right?
It's been a discussion since I've been on boards, period. So to see this finally coming to a point where it might get done, I'm very excited.
Don't you dare say might, Chris.
No. You have to say might until it actually gets done. You know, you
Okay.
count your chickens for the hat. So
I am shocked with the difference in the low bid and the high bid. Wow.
I was surprised at how high. I mean, all the companies that bid are reputable companies. You know, I was very surprised at how high Tetros was.
Yeah.
Because they actually do a lot of the excavation work for the town of Highgate, and they usually win out on the bids there. So I was surprised.
Ruggiano did a very comprehensive analysis of all the bids. That spreadsheet, you know, Chris has reviewed that spreadsheet. So has Scott. I have it as well, but it literally line by line almost into categories and compared where those different dollar figures were different. So we did review all that.
Any other questions? So at this time, I would entertain a motion to award a bid.
I'll move to award the bids to Wright without the performance bond.
I have a first for awarding the bid to Wright's Excavating without the performance bond. Do I have a second? Peter's
second that.
Ooh, Peter already second.
Question, Chris. That lowers the price by 15,000 then, right?
It's 14,000 and some change, but
Okay.
That would have been on top of that, right?
no, that's part of it.
Okay.
That was part of the bid.
Yeah, I think it's 14. My thing didn't print very well. 14,404. But if we can just leave it approximately 14, a reduction in that bid price, that would be great.
That's fine. That's part of the motion.
So the dollar amount would then be 476. I'm not sure the exact 100. I don't have it in front of me.
Like I said, if we can just say the bid would be awarded at 490,427 minus approximately 14,000 for the performance bond, that would allow me a couple $100 worth of flexibility.
Okay, sounds good. So any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of awarding the bid to Wright's Excavating, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Raise your hand. Looks like everybody raised their hand, so motion carries 9-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laura's worked tirelessly on this project in the last 6 months trying to make this happen because things got stuck in the mud at different points, and I'm very excited that it's moving forward.
Me too.
Right. Okay. Next up is a property legal issue. And this is pertaining to the fence next to the Swanton Elementary School. Most likely we'll want to discuss this in executive session. We do have some legal advice, and that would give us grounds for executive session.
We'd be going into executive session to discuss legal advice for the confidential legal advice regarding a property issue.
Right.
Are we going to interrupt our meeting now to do that, or are we going to put it at the end?
No, I just would be looking for a finding that is appropriate so that at the end,
Right.
when we go into executive session, that's when we would go in.
Right.
And now that we have a finding, we can move on to technology purchase. And this is an FYI.
Okay. I had spoken to Chris a little bit about this when we met earlier this week. As we all know, the COVID situation has impacted technology, well, lots of things, pretty much everything, but the supply and demand on technology has obviously been impacted. Every year, we typically lease a few hundred devices as a replacement cycle for our student devices. Our tech director came to me last week and is very concerned about receiving those new devices, ordering those devices and receiving them in a timely manner to make sure that if we do need to return to remote learning at some in the fall, that we have the devices we need. And really either way, we were told about a week and a half ago that if we ordered at that time, devices wouldn't even come potentially until the end of August, hopefully middle of August. And it does take a lot of time to set those up. That combined with the fact that revenues and the financial situation next year is still kind of unknown. I'd like to allow him to move forward with a purchase order for those devices for MBU, Highgate, and Franklin for their fiscal year 21 devices with Panery, which is the company that provided the lowest bid. They would all get the same devices. The tech team agreed upon that. They're Chromebooks plus a license. It's 415 devices at $246. That includes the license fee. It's for a total of about $102,000. If we found out that, I guess I'm thinking about a lot of different situations here because we don't know the financial situation. I'd like to allow him to move forward with the PO. If we find out from the state that we are going to receive a waiver for carryover usage next year, we can kind of adjust what we're doing. But for right now, take those funds out of fiscal year 20 or the current year to finance this purchase and potentially not lease to save expenses out of next year. But I do still have a month's worth of time or almost where I could adjust. We could go out and get a lease and pay for them over 3 years. We could shift it into next year. It's more just to get the order going so that those aren't delayed. I'm sure that was confusing.
Any questions about that? Now, would you need a motion from us at the next meeting to?
I would only need a motion if we did move forward with a lease and to award a lease.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that this was something that we were doing.
Laura, do you know the amount of cost savings we achieve by purchasing now versus a 3-year lease?
I don't know what I'm assuming interest rates, leasing rates will be low. So it's tough to know. I mean, we were paying over 3%, over 4% on some last year. So it's tough to know. I have not researched leasing rates. It's not obviously the savings as a consideration, but it's more so, you know, our financial situation next year and trying to take as many expenses off the table as we could, as far as paying those out of this year when we're anticipating a fairly large carryover. If the AOE the legislature does pass a waiver and they're allowing us to use our carryover next year before it gets audited, then I wouldn't worry about that. But right now I don't know that. So I'm you know, we still have a little bit of time. I can move forward in different ways, but slowly running out of time for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. So it's more of a risk mitigation strategy here to make sure we've got the funds available. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes, and to get the devices in our hands. Robert is, I don't know if Robert's on this call, but I know he's concerned about the receipt of those devices in a timely fashion.
That would be my reason for moving forward as soon as possible, because other places are going to be making these decisions. So I think the sooner we say go, we should. I'd hate to have these arrive the first week of October and find out we really needed them earlier.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you, Laura. Okay, on to old business. Check warrants is up first.
I shared a document in the shared drive. There was a cover page and then the backup, 2 separate files.
Laura, I don't have those with me. Does Meg have it?
Okay, I can either read them or project it. I'm not sure which you prefer.
I don't
Go
know.
ahead. Go ahead and read them if you want.
Okay. So these are check warrants through the month of May 2020. Accounts payable $600,642.27. Payroll checks is $66,108.01. Payroll other disbursements, which is direct deposit, Fed and state taxes, that's $2,137,272.93. Payroll deductions, which is health, dental, retirement, dues, etc., $579,446.38, for a grand total of $3,383,469.59.
So at this time, I would entertain a motion to accept check warrants as read. Devin's the first, second. Megan's the second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of accepting the check warrants as read, signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you.
Next, thank you. Next up is a financial update.
Okay, so I also included a financial report in the shared drive. Starts with revenues on the first few pages and then goes to expenditures. As I've stated, and I stated last month as well, Missisquoi Valley School District is probably coming into this COVID situation better than most school districts, and that's due to the diligence of our administrators working really hard to be efficient and effective with their resources. As far as revenues are concerned, we are anticipating about $358,000 more in revenue than what we had budgeted currently. The reconciliation for taxes has been accomplished. That was at the direction of the AOE that happens every year. So that's happened with the towns. Tuition was up about $200,000 this year. We're always a little conservative with our tuition when we're budgeting for that revenue, just because we just never know when those students tend to move out of our towns. But we're up about $200,000 there. Interest earnings, as I mentioned last month, we were very conservative with our budgeting there because this situation as being a merged district and borrowing money as a merged district and our line of credit and such is very different. And this was a new account with People's United, but we've received, or through the end of the year, anticipate receiving about $116,000 in interest on our $37 million that we collect, which is great. So that helped out the revenue situation. The special ed SEER or expenditure reimbursement was over what we anticipated by about $200,000, and we've received all that we're going to receive, I believe, as far as special ed reimbursement this year. But that's offset by extraordinary revenue, special ed revenue that we were anticipating. We may receive another check for extraordinary reimbursement, but the way that works is that you have to actually incur the expenses and report on the expenses prior to receiving the revenue. and it's after a certain threshold of, I forget if it's 65 or 75,000 now, it's being changed. And so oftentimes we don't receive that revenue until the next fiscal year. So we will get the revenue, it just may not come in this fiscal year. So those two kind of offset each other. That's about it as far as revenues are concerned, as kind of highlights. As far as expenses, we're currently anticipating under expending our budget by about 1.7 million as far as expenditures are concerned. A good portion of that was budgeted versus actually filled positions, and then changes in benefits and enrollment and HRA usage and that sort of thing. We did have, I would say, quite a few positions that went unfilled in the high school, and that was part of our budget savings going into the next year. So those changes in staffing were a good portion of this savings. Other than that, there were some small savings in, like, I think we over budgeted for legal support for negotiations and some legal costs, because we just never know. Julie's done a great job handling a lot of those things on her own. So those costs were down. And then the COVID situation, we worked with administration when this all came down in March, and we basically said, we have to be very diligent and work really hard that only expenses that are absolutely necessary and provide students with what they need is what we can approve. We don't want people going without things, but this is where we are because it's just such a unsettling time. And so we did continue to pay staff. We did continue to pay on our service contracts for the most part. Some were eliminated when services were just not being provided at all, or weren't able to be provided at all, and we could work with those contractors. The largest part of the service contracts was transportation. We were able to not have to pay for the transportation portions of those contracts. When you look at an independent school, like an NCSS, the transportation is about $8,000 a year. So there was, it can add up. Those savings can add up, not having to pay on the transportation pieces. We also had some savings in supplies, equipment, those sorts of things, just from ridiculing and transitioning to this remote learning and not having students in the building, of course. That's really about it.
Laura, what about substitute teachers? Was that a significant savings? Substitute teachers?
Yeah, I would say we had, for the last couple of months, yes. We always go over on our sublines traditionally because we never budget enough. We're starting to slowly increase those lines so they better match actuals, but typically those lines do run over anyway. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. Overall, if we look at a bottom line and I actually take into account additional revenues that I anticipate receiving, we're looking at about a $2.1 million carryover right now. So I feel good about that we've worked really hard the last few months as an MVSD admin team, ensuring that families and community members have what they need, but that we've positioned ourselves as well as we can going into fiscal year 21, hopefully.
Chris? Is Chris there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That's really good news. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Julie, Pierrette, whoever, Jay, Dan, Jen, everybody that's worked on it in the elementary schools. I talked to Julie maybe a week or 10 days ago because there was a lot of stuff going on in Swanton on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but 2 or 3 people saw me and I talked to Julie and it was crazy. I mean, I did have one person call me and say, we're going to lose our home because taxes going up 25%. I'd asked Julie about after tonight, and I don't know how you want to use the data. It would be great if something went up on our website or we did some release by the board chair or the chair and superintendent, just saying that we are not running a deficit, that we project additional revenue, and some of the expenses did not come in as high because of the virus. It doesn't have to be, I don't think, lengthy, but I think it'd be good to get something out in the public because I tell you, some of the things that after I heard that, I did get on a Facebook page. I'm not on Facebook, but I got on and some of the stuff was just off the wall. And I don't want to get into a big debate with people, but I think just a nice firm statement from whoever, say school board chair, superintendent, business manager, just saying that, we're really proud of our administrators and everybody that worked hard to make sure that we didn't go over budget. So whatever.
And we'll continue. I mean, today we met for about 6 hours today with my business office team, and we're going to continue to meet very frequently over the next couple of weeks to make sure that we're in position to have to react if we need to very quickly. And so, we're still cleaning up POs. We're still looking at expenditures. We're trying to plan for anything that they could throw at us. So, these numbers can still change. Or I may have to come back in June and say, look, strategy needs to change because of something that came down the pike. But I'm asking for you to be patient with that, but know that we are thinking about lots of different scenarios right now.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions pertaining to financial update? Seeing none, we can move on to new hire info.
So, and I will put this in the folder. There were so many things in the darn folder for you all that I didn't see that I didn't put it in there. The elementary schools have finished hiring. There is one long-term sub special ed position in Swanton that is not yet filled. I am an optimistic person, but it is difficult to find a special educator to begin with, let alone a long-term sub. So I'm not sure where that position will go. But MVU is nearly finished with its hiring. I am meeting with the new math candidate, Arena Kress, on Friday. I met with the special educator. Arena will be teaching high school math. I met with Cheryl Miller, who will be a new special educator for us in the middle school. I met with Jordan Browning, who's coming from Utah to teach middle level English language arts. It has been a very, very busy season for hiring. Doing things virtually has been complex, I think. But I think the teams have gotten good at getting a sense of teachers and having committees meet with people virtually. It's a new skill we've all learned. I have to say that meeting with new teachers using Google Meets, I feel like I'm advertising for a company, but just doing it virtually where you can email someone and they say, I'm free now. And boom, instantly you can spend 20 minutes to half an hour with somebody and find out, what their experience is and why they want to come to Northwestern Vermont to teach math. We've had some really wonderful people. We've been very lucky, and our administrators have done a tremendous job. So I'm very excited about that. And that is the hiring update. We should be all finished. God willing, the creek don't rise, I think, as Terry said earlier in the meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, on to other business. First up there is negotiations update.
So as you all know, we've approved our educational support staff agreement. Administrators are going to be hopefully looking at that together on Thursday for a little bit. We have a meeting on Thursday at 6 o'clock with professional staff. We have a very small list of things, just 2 things. And we should, so I think we're optimistic about that process.
Yes. Very good. Okay, and the fun one now, the retreat planning.
You start, Chris.
Sure. I was thinking that it'd be nice to try to do this towards the end of June. Normally that's an impossible time to schedule a meeting, but with COVID keeping us home, and not being able to travel. I was thinking maybe we could do that at the end of June before things open up and we can travel again. Not that they will this in July, but one can hope. The other thing is Julie reached out to Mike Doise. Did I say his last name right?
Yes.
Okay. Reached out to him to help us mediate through the different levels of communication between the superintendent and the board, how we want to operate as a board, and so on and so forth. And he is available pretty much the month of June. I do believe he travels after that, so it gets a little more challenging after that. So I guess first up, is there any dates anybody is available that we can meet? Is there any dates they aren't?
Our next board meeting is on the 16th.
Are we talking about meeting virtually?
I was thinking that we could probably do a hybrid. I'm not sure everybody would be comfortable to meet in person. We would be allowed to meet in person as long as we stay 6 feet apart. I was thinking maybe we could have a base amount of people that meet in person, and then everyone else that doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't want to or would prefer to meet virtually. That's fine.
Thank you.
I personally, I would like to be in person. These Google Meets are a little challenging to mediate from a computer screen, especially when I'm not that great with computers. So I would prefer to be in person, but that's me.
I think it would be nice for the board to, it's just going to be the board and me and the facilitator. And we're going to talk about, the roles of the board and the roles of the superintendent and how we make decisions, how we as a group, not broadly, but how we want to do business. And I'm pretty excited about it because I think we do a pretty good job, and that it would be really nice to just get explicit about some things. It's hard like this for, Don and Devin and Terry to sit around and have a dialogue about something and another group have that conversation, where in person you can do that a little bit better. Even if some people are still virtual, we can make that work.
Right.
Would we go to the MVU library, MVU cafeteria, or something like that?
Something like that, Don, where we can really spread out. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to get a date from you all now, and then I'll talk to MVU and Swanton about space, because I know you've got facility directors who just can't wait for school to end so they can tear that school apart and get things clean. So we'll work on what is the best available space, but I know we can find space.
Right. Joanne?
So how much time are we looking at? Are we looking like an 8-hour day, or are we looking at a 4-hour window? What? Because I hear retreat and I'm like, oh, let's go somewhere for a week.
In the past, that when I've done board retreats, we usually in the past did them on a Saturday. In my experience, we usually did it at Connie Bjor's camp on the lake, which was awesome. But since none of us have a camp and we can't gather in a small building like that anyway, that's a moot point. Generally, it's usually about 4-5 hours to go through everything without having to rush through it.
Julie mentioned Mike DeWeese. I've known Mike DeWeese for many years. I'm sure Julie has.
Yeah.
Is he going to facilitate it? Who's going to set the agenda? You said something about relations. Is it basically going to be board superintendent relations?
Yes, but specific to us, how we want to make decisions. What, do we want to have a committee for this, that, or the other thing? So it's going to be specific for us. And I've already had one conversation with Mike. We'll have some follow-up should the board be on board with this. And he'll reach out to Chris as well. He might even have an assessment that we do. I'm not sure. But just something for us to look at objectively.
I want to just follow up on what Terry said tonight. I think we mentioned it briefly a few weeks ago. I have spoken with Terry. Terry was the chair way back when. And certainly I don't think we're going to go back there and start our evaluation, but, I think we need to have some time so you can tell us, the types of procedures that you use with the business manager, the special ed coordinator, peer your principals, so that we're all kind of following a similar system. And I think this is some of the things Terry can speak for herself, but, she's had experience. She's worked with groups. I would like to have some time for that, Julie, so that, I think everybody from the comments when we went to 2-year contract feeling good where we are, but we need to hear your goals, what you see going on for the school district, for yourself, for your administrators. And we kind of need to talk ourselves and make sure we know we have some goals too. So I'm going to keep quiet. Terry's popped up there.
Yeah, I some of the conversations I had with Mike, he asked a lot of probing questions. Today he asked me if I could give him my job description, and I honestly said, I don't think I have one. So, though there may be one somewhere, I don't know. But, we've come together through a merger that was a challenge. We've had this kind of year. We have not had a ton of time to sit and say, what are our goals as a board? Right? So he asked me, do you have board goals? Or do you have a policy about this other thing? And, I said, well, yeah, we have just mandated policies that we read on a June 26, all 20, however many of them we got through in a month, so we could be all set up to go. There's so much growth that we can do together. I think it's a good opportunity.
Terry.
Thank you. Joanne, you had your hand up first, so
I'm sorry, I did.
Yep. I know it's hard to see when you're online, so I just wanted to be polite since I saw her.
It's okay. I just wanted to say I'm excited about this. My weekends are open. That's all I wanted to say. So it's all good. So just whenever, let me know.
Okay, Terry.
And I was just going to say, I'm excited about this too. I love this kind of stuff. So, what Don was saying, I think it would be great if we could have consistency wherever possible. So it would be, and I've got some of that guilt that I never did it when Julie does such a fantastic job. She deserves to have, performance reviews and feedback more formal. So I would love it if we could have something consistent all the way through with what you do with your direct reports. That cat is about to attack me. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Anyway, sorry. I fight. So anyway, I would love to see us be able to, as one of our goals, when we talk about leadership and being able to recruit, retain, etc., I would like to have that be part of that discussion in terms of how we recruit, retain our superintendents.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Chris, did you say we're going to meet on a weekend? Weekends are tough for me. That's when I do most of my work on weekends. So, but
the hard part about doing it during the week is I just think it's going to be hard to have enough of a block of a time.
Okay.
Unless people have days off during the week. Fortunately, I can work around, if we do a day during the week, I'll just work on the weekend to make up for it. So I can be flexible as far as that goes, but I don't know about other people.
I wouldn't be able to do it during the week.
What about the 20th? It's a Saturday.
I probably can make that work. Yeah, I can do the 20th. Anybody else, or
if you do the 20th, I can do the 20th. That's the only Saturday I'm not already booked somewhere. So,
well, that's handy.
And Chris, I'm looking to travel the month too. So the last weekend of the month would be out for me. The 20th would be better.
20th. Devin. Peter?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
All right. That sounds good. I know Mike told me that he usually goes to Canada, but the border's closed. I think he had said after the 21st, he may be able to go to his camp in the summer. So it almost seems as if this is coming coming together. I had told him the length of a board meeting, like a couple hours. So I think he'll be excited if we can, spend 3 or 4 hours together. I think it'll be more productive, and I will let him know about the part around the superintendent piece. And I know he's going to want to talk to Chris as well about your needs, what you need out of this process too. So thank you for that. I'm excited to be able to do this work with you.
Julie?
So we're going to plan on doing meeting on the 20th, which is a Saturday. We're going to work on where, we'll try to do MVU if possible. We'll have to see with cleaning and whatnot, what's available. So tentatively, we'll say it's at MVU. We'll get a lot more details out this week. Dan?
Our building should be good to go. So it's custodial staff's been doing a great job. So you just tell us what kind of space you need, and if you want a classroom or something like that, should be easily available.
I like the idea of the commons. It's plenty of rooms, well lit and all that stuff that we can spread out without and it's easy to find. So not that any of us can't find the library, but okay.
Chris, Julie?
Don?
Okay, so we're talking about a board retreat. We're talking about the superintendent. I have been involved with them that way, but I've also been involved with them when other administrators were in attendance, the administrative team. Have we decided, is this only Julie and the board? Or is this administrators and the board? And I don't have any preference. It's just in my experience, I've seen them, I've been involved both ways. I don't know if one's any better than the other, but I just thought I'd ask before we signed off.
Well, let's see what the other Joanne and then Terry.
So, and I respect Dawn's advice, opinion 100%. But for me, I'm brand jam and new. I want to get to know you guys. I want to get to know what my role is first. And then I wouldn't oppose maybe in 3 months, let's see what we need after we meet together. I don't know who else is new. I don't know anybody. I got into this during COVID-19 and I'm just the new kid on the block who's, going through the motions of COVID-19 as a school board member. So that's my opinion. It's just my opinion.
I respect that, and I have no problem with that personally. I just thought it should be discussed before we leave so that people weren't left hanging, wonder who's going to be there. No, that's fine. Julie and the board, and if this goes well, we may have one in 3 months or 4 months and invite in the other team members. That's fine.
Terry?
Oh, I was just going to say that I would agree with what everybody's saying in terms of us doing it alone first as the board, because we've got some things we want to decide what to bring. We need some work ourselves. And then maybe next year or couple, half year or whatever, we get together with all of us. That's my opinion.
I'm in full agreement to that also. I think we need to organize ourselves first and then, move on, expand from there.
I have to say, when I was talking with Mike and he asked a lot of really good probing questions, it was really clear that this board is highly functional. You get along really well. You make decisions as a whole. You don't get polarized over things. Your communication is good. And there's a lot of trust and in the administrative team and the work that we all do. But we just want to make sure that we're at that next level so that we're always growing together. So we don't have meetings where we're like, do we decide that? Should we, we really just want to know.
Yeah.
We need to buy those laptop Chromebooks, does Julie just tell Laura to go ahead and do the purchase order? How do we want to make those decisions? What level of involvement do we have? So I think that'll be great that we're all clear as a group about what we want to do so I can better support you.
Agreed. One last thing with June 20th, would people prefer morning or afternoon?
Morning.
I would say morning.
Morning too.
Morning.
So, awesome. Okay. So that's great. We have a meeting planned. Awesome.
I'll reach out to Mike and make sure that works.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, next up on the agenda is future meeting dates, which is our next school board meeting, which is June 16th, which that's another question. Do we want to start meeting in person as a board? Do we want to keep doing this virtually? If we met as a board, we'd probably still have to have public virtual check-in. I would even say probably administrators at first, because there's only so much room we can spread out. But the board itself can meet in person if they want, or we can keep doing this virtually. Thoughts?
Stay virtual.
Stay virtual? Everyone else feels the same way?
Yeah.
Maybe one more time, yeah.
One more time. One more.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, so next meeting will be virtually held at 6:30 on June 16th. So unless anybody has anything else, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Steve's the first on a motion to go into executive session. Second. Megan's a second. Any discussion?
So we're going in for a legal property issue.
Right, which would be just Julie joining the board, correct?
I think so.
Okay. So all those in favor of going to an executive session at 8:05, inviting in Julie, signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Looks like it carries 9-0. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We're good.
Okay, we came out of executive session at 8:21. No action needed. So unless anyone has anything to add, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Peter was the first. Second.
I'll second.
Steve was the second. All those in favor of adjourning at 8:22, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.